Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me again, day 17. Today, we'll be talking about how to count carbohydrates. For so many of us, I think it's a big challenge to understand and know how to count our carbohydrates when you have diabetes. At least it was for me when I started first, until I see a dietitian and she walked me through how to count it. And it has been really a very helpful experience, and I've been using it for so long. That's why I want to share this with you all. So I can and I will manage my diabetes. My diabetes doesn't stop me from living the life that I want to live. I can and I will manage my diabetes so I can live a healthy and a happy life. Alrighty, so how to count carbohydrates. So before we dive into how to count the carbohydrates, we have to know what are the different types of carbohydrates, or what are carbohydrates in general. Carbohydrates are just sugar molecules, nothing, nothing less, nothing more. So there are three types of carbohydrates. The first one is sugar, such as like the natural sugar in fruits and milk, or the added sugar in sodas and in many other packaged foods. The second one is starch. It including like wheat, oats, and other grains. Starchy vegetables such as corn and potatoes and dried beans, lentils, and peas. Those are also starch. And fiber, the third one is fiber. So the part of plant foods that isn't digested but help you stay healthy and helps you to kind of maintain a nice stable blood sugar. So the note here, sugar and starch can raise your blood sugar, but fiber does not. So when you pick food with carbohydrate, make sure you pick the food that has the highest fiber, because that decreases the chances of the carbohydrate raising your blood sugar. So always make sure when you read a label, the carbohydrate at least has more than 3 grams of fiber in the label. So when we talk about carbohydrates, it's just two things I want to clarify. So there are two types of carbohydrates. We have the complex or the good carbohydrates, and we have the simple or bad carbohydrates. Not really, bad, but the simple carbohydrates, the reason being like I label them bad is for us diabetes, because it shoots up the blood sugar so quick. So our choices has to be always complex carbohydrates to prevent a rapid spike of the blood sugar. So it's low or moderate in calories. That's the number one, reason. It's high in nutrients. It's lacking refined sugar and refined grains. High in natural occurring fibers. Low in sodium. Low in saturated fat. Contains none or very low cholesterol and trans fat. So those are the complex carbohydrates, and look at all the benefits it can give us. The simple carbohydrates, most of them are high in calories, full of refined sugars like corn syrup, white sugar, honey, and fruit juices. High in refined grains like white flour. Low in many nutrients because they are processed chemically. They are low in fiber. Most of them are high in sodium. Sometimes high in saturated fat and cholesterol and trans fat too. So our choice always has to be complex carb when we choose our carbohydrates. So how to count our carbohydrates, because that's the main topic. So carbohydrates are measured in grams. One package, most of the time on a packaged food, you can find the total carb grams on the nutrient facts label. One thing that I want to point on this one is when you see the total carbohydrates, you always can subtract the amount of fiber it has to know the total carbohydrates in it, because as we've seen in a couple of slides back, fiber is the part of carbohydrates, and fiber doesn't convert into glucose. So you can subtract that from the total carbohydrates to know what the total carbohydrates are. And you can, if the food is not packaged and if it doesn't have the information that you're looking for, you can also check the list on a CDC website. that has a lot of lists of foods that has carbohydrates and how many grams it has and how much we have to eat. It gives us a very detailed information. So I will leave the link in the description box below, so you can go ahead and click it and you can print or save it in your screenshot so you can understand and learn from it. Or you can use some carb counting apps. There are so many apps out there to find grams of carbs in the foods and drinks. Those are the ways that's going to help you how to count carbs. And how many carbs should I eat as a diabetic? There are no one size fit at all, for all. Everyone is different because of everyone's body is different, everyone's weight is different, everyone's metabolism is different, everybody's activity is different. So we can't say this is how much everybody should eat. But according to the American Diabetes Association, most adults with diabetes aim for 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal, and they can also have 15 to 20 grams of carbs per snack. But this number may go up and down based on how active you are, your age and gender, your weight, and other factors like medications you take, and etc. The good thing now, if you're like a person who are taking insulin, you can eat a lot of carbohydrates, even if it's not encouraged, because the more carbohydrates you eat, the more weight you gain. So stick with the 45 to 60. But in several different occasions, if you have to eat more grams of carbohydrates, make sure you bolus yourself with a good amount of insulin, based on your doctor's a recommendation. Because one serving of carbohydrate equals to 15 grams of carbohydrate, 15 grams of carbohydrate. So one serving equals to 15 grams. So we are allowed to eat 3 to 4 servings of carbohydrates on each meal. So you either can count it as a gram of carbohydrates or as a serving of carbohydrates. So these are some of the examples that I took from the CDC website about the starch and how this is the serving size and how much carb it has. It's a very helpful resource. So the action for today is, what carbohydrates do you eat most of the time? Are they complex carbohydrate or are they simple carbohydrates? We already discussed about the benefits of complex carbohydrates and the disadvantage of eating simple carbohydrates. So I know you're a well-educated person, so from now on you will pick complex carbohydrates every time you choose carbohydrates. Then you'll use the list provided to check how much carb you are consuming per day, and also use it as a guide to kind of even if you don't have this information available to you every time, but once you have a basic understanding of what each food, how many carbohydrate each food has, that will help you down the road to control your carb portions and to measure your carbohydrates too. So thank you so much again for listening and tuning in. For those of you who has been in this journey with me from the beginning, thank you so much again. For those of you who are just watching this today, thank you again, and please share and subscribe this channel so you can get this this type of education, this type of video every time I post. Thank you so much again. Until tomorrow, have a safe and a blessed day.